I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is Future Signal. And on this episode, I just want to answer one of the questions I get the most when it comes to Bitcoin. Once people are like, get over the, is it a scam? Can the government turn it off? Once people get past all of the FUD narratives, one of the most common questions that I get is very simple. And it's, how much Bitcoin do you think I need? Now, need is probably the focus here. How much do you need? I don't know. How much do you want? That's probably more accurate to what you're saying. Really, what you're trying to say is, how much do I need to separate myself from where I am today, right? For this to make a difference in my financial future, if we're thinking about it as an investment. And I want to just say, none of this is an investment advice at all. This is totally, edutainment, right? Education and entertainment. But this is something I get all the time, so I kind of wanted to answer it. And I want to answer it by giving you an anecdote. Today I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he's recently just got, I don't think he's made the buy yet at the time of this recording, but he's going to be a whole coiner. And a whole coiner is super rare. So when I think about how much you need, I like to think about it in a percentage of how rare you may be in the world by owning X amount of Bitcoin. So I first want to break down what a whole coiner would be. If all 21 million Bitcoin were out on the market and you could go out and get them, then you would be one of 21 million people on the planet. That's pretty basic math, right? You would have one coin, and there would only be 20,999,000 other people that would maybe have a coin. And 21 million people owning something that no one else can own is super, super rare in a world where there's 8.1 billion people. So this is less than 1% of people if you owned one coin and there were other people that also owned one coin. The reality of it is there isn't 21 million people that own one coin. I think the total amount of wallets, and you can see this on chain, it's like less than 300,000 that own one coin. Now, I'm sure that there's tons of people that have fractions of a Bitcoin here, fractions of a Bitcoin here, fractions of a Bitcoin here being different wallets, and they own the keys to all those wallets. So they actually own that, so you can't see it on chain. But let's live in a world where even 500,000 people only have one Bitcoin. 500,000 people anywhere in the world having access to something that no one else can have access to makes that thing, whatever that is, in this case Bitcoin, super, super rare. And so I actually find one Bitcoin at this point something to be not really attainable by most people. And that's because right now a Bitcoin is worth about $100,000. And $100,000 for 99% of people on the planet is way more than they're ever going to be able to afford. And if you're listening to this in the United States or Canada or Europe, or basically if you're on the dollar, whether that's a Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, the US dollar, or if you're on the euro, $100,000 maybe isn't a lot within our societies. People own homes that that may be worth $1 million. People own homes that that maybe their mortgage is $500,000. And so $100,000 in society today in the United States and Europe isn't necessarily a lot of money. But what happens is when it comes to being liquid or having that money on hand, most people don't. Most of the wealthiest people I know, their net worth that they keep in liquidity, that they keep in cash where they're ready to buy, is 1%, 1 or 2, 3 or 4, maybe 5% at any one time, because they know that you want to have that money invested so that way it's working for you, right? And all that goes back to, if you are thinking about how many people can buy one Bitcoin, it's a very, very, very small amount of people on the planet. Even in the United States, I think it's something like 60% of people in the US can't cover a $400 emergency, whatever that looks like. Maybe they need some medicine. Maybe it's a surgery that they need that wasn't, predestined. They couldn't have seen it. Maybe their car needs some repairs. Maybe the home that they own, and they're house poor and they live paycheck to paycheck and they're just paying down their mortgage, and all of a sudden they need new gutters, or there's a hole in their roof from a tree that wasn't going to be covered by insurance, whatever. Most people don't have in the United States $400 liquid to be able to cover one of these fees. So because they don't have $400 liquid, they definitely don't have $100,000 to go out and buy a whole coin. All of this goes back to the point. Let me get back to the point. How much do I think you need, or how much should you, what should your goal be when it comes to stacking? And this is something I talk about a lot on this channel. Once again, not financial advice, but I think a goal should be 0.1 Bitcoin, a tenth of a Bitcoin. And a tenth of a Bitcoin today may not seem like a lot, even though it is $10,000, which I think is a lot of money to have in an asset that is super liquid. And at any time you could just say, yeah, let me just sell this and get this money back. But 0.1 Bitcoin is the goal that I try to share with people. It's the goal I think people should be trying to wrap their head around. It's the one that I think in 10 years, I'll probably be sitting on this channel and being like, yeah, 0.1 Bitcoin is probably unattainable for you. Here's why. Why don't you get to 0.01 or a hundredth of a Bitcoin? Just like today, I'm telling you to get a tenth of a Bitcoin. I'm sure in 10 years, I'll be telling you to get 100th of a Bitcoin as something that's probably going to be generational wealth, something that's probably going to be good for your financials, for your family, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure 10 years ago, I would have told you to get 10 Bitcoin because 10 Bitcoin 10 years ago, let's see, in 2015 would have only been about $5,000, right? Now it's 20x that, and it's $100,000. So all this to be said, I think 1/10 of a Bitcoin is where you should be going. If we go back to my original example and talking about, hey, if 21 million were all out, right? All 21 million Bitcoin are on the market. How many people could then have 1/10 of a Bitcoin? All we're going to do is multiply 21 by 10, and it would be 210 million. Now, 210 million people out of 8.1 billion people still has you in, there's only 2.5% of people could ever own that. The amount of people that even are going to be able to own 0.1 Bitcoin in about 4 or 5 years, I think it's going to be less than 1 million people on the planet. And if you own something that less than 1 million people own on the planet that can be accepted around the planet, you are going to own something that is uber valuable. Remember, and I don't know if I've said this on the channel or if I say this in other places, but money moves towards opportunity and wealth moves towards scarcity. You want to find things that are scarce. So there you go. Bitcoin being the most scarce thing on earth. You want to own some of it. If you're just starting out or if you're in your journey, get to that 0.1. That is going to be the benchmark of wealth in probably the next 5 to 10 years. Because when Bitcoin gets to $1 million, you are going to have 100K liquid. And 100K USD liquid in many countries on the planet is going to allow you to honestly retire. And once again, I do want to get into that video and show you that math so that doesn't sound wild. But if you can only spend 500 to 800 a month to live on, and you own Bitcoin and you're going to use that, there is a situation where that will just continue to regenerate as basically the price of Bitcoin will outgrow what you're going to spend monthly. For those of you who know about financial independence, retire early, community, FIRE, or financial independence, this used to be the 4% rule, but I think Bitcoin is drastically changing the way that will work. And there are people already that travel the world now that have a good amount of Bitcoin, and whenever they need something, they just use Bitcoin because they know the price of Bitcoin in local fiat terms or in USD terms is definitely going to outgrow what they spend annually. And if that didn't make sense, that's okay. I will do another episode. But yes, Bitcoin is the new vehicle for wealth. It is the new way to protect your purchasing power over time. So 0.1 Bitcoin. If you enjoyed this, please go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please go ahead and subscribe. Be sure to share this with someone because I think that this is a really important thing. It's good for people to hear that, hey, you just need to get 1/10 of a Bitcoin. And on that journey to get 1/10 of a Bitcoin, you can buy little pieces of it, right? This is called dollar cost averaging. You don't have to go out and buy a whole coin. So thank you. And also make sure you're following us on social media at Future Signal Pod. Thanks for checking out this episode of Future Signal Pod, and I will see you on the next episode.